UndaSkore.
Yo, this is UndaSkore. Welcome back to the channel for another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over a few of the basic principles of music theory, and each week there'll be a new episode where I go into music theory a bit deeper and deeper. So eventually, after a period of time, hopefully as a beginner producer, you'd be a lot more comfortable with music theory in general. So if you're new to producing and you're just getting into it, hopefully this will help a lot. Even if you're intermediate and have been doing this for quite a long time, hopefully this can give you a few different ways of thinking about things. Something I've mentioned a few times as well, just to reiterate, is music theory is just a guide. At the end of the day, if you're making music, it's all about something that sounds good. And I used to always say I make music so that I have something to listen to myself. At the end of the day, do whatever you want. If it sounds good, that's fine. Hopefully music theory will make it a little bit easier for you to do this though. Okay, so we're going to start off with the piano. So I've got Ableton open and I've just got a Keyzone Classic open. If you're learning music theory, if you're getting into production, I always recommend to anyone doing this, learn a musical instrument. Learning the piano or the guitar will make a huge difference in how quick you learn it and how easy it is to learn and understand. The first thing to note is what the keys are. So if you look at this grand piano here, you'll see that they've marked all the letter C's. C1, C2, C3, C4. Now there are only 7 letters in the musical alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then it repeats over and over again. So every one of these white notes is going to be a different key. So the C's are marked out, but the way it actually goes is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it rinses and repeats A, B, C. So the white keys we know are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What are the black keys? The black keys are the sharps and the flats. They are in between the white notes. There's only 5 of these. Not every white note has a corresponding black key. So the way to remember it is the black key to the right of the white note is going to be the sharp of that note. So for example, this is middle C. The black note to its right is going to be C sharp. And then you've got D, D sharp. Then E, and you'll see there's no black note, so it goes straight onto F. Then F sharp, onto G, G sharp, onto A sharp, onto B, and then no black note, onto C. So that means there are 12 different sounds in total in the musical scale, because then it repeats again. So you'll see there's only these 12 notes, and then it repeats, and it goes an octave higher. So when you play something like a C down here, and then play a C up there, it's the same note, but a higher octave. All the same notes. If you wanted to, you could play all together at the same time, and that will sound a lot more grand and, you know, thicken things up instead of playing just one note. And that's the basic sort of idea behind chords and harmonies, because you're just layering things, but we'll get into that later. Okay, so now we know what the notes are. Eventually you'll learn to memorize them. It's relatively simple. Just always remember where the C is and you'll be fine. Just keep practicing and just keep trying to memorize it. If you have a MIDI keyboard, sometimes you can just put a sticker on it or just write the letter on there. It's a really good way so that when you're playing and you're constantly looking, you just start getting that memorization going. Okay, so now when we listen to a song, what are we hearing? We're just hearing different combinations of these 12 different sounds. Okay, so now what we want to do is start understanding how do we make music from this. Really basically, if I wanted to go straight into making music, just armed with the knowledge I have now, I'm going to just start off with that C, that middle C that we mentioned, C3. And I'm just going to draw in that note, like so. And this is how it sounds. To make a melody, you just want to find a combination of these notes to make something that sounds pleasing to the human ear, essentially. So I'm going to start off using only white notes, and that would be working in a specific scale. Like I said, I'm not going to get into scales at the moment, but the general thing to note is that there are different scales which are certain notes in a certain order that will sound pleasing. So the C major scale is just white notes. It's literally C to C. So now I'm going to get into chords. Chords are basically just layers of different notes. If you put 2 or more different notes together, you're going to get a chord. Now, to me, chords are what makes music sound good. If you want to hear a good song, you're going to notice that most of the time there's a chord progression that makes it sound good, and that's what invokes emotion. So to me, chords are the basis of good music. So keeping in mind what I said about just 2 notes or more being layered to make a chord, so how do you know which notes to layer? Essentially you can layer any notes you want. If it sounds good, then it sounds good, but most of the time it will sound good because you're playing what's meant to be played. Okay, so the most basic chord that you'll see and you'll probably hear a lot of the time is called a triad, which is 3 notes. Tri, 3. So you see those 3 notes. This is a C major chord, that's 3 notes. And how do you know which notes make that triad? For me to figure out a chord, I always do the first note, and then I'll do the last note. So those 2, that will make an instant chord. How do you know which note it is? You're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th note will be that note there. So now if I wanted to, I could make a chord progression just going like this. Instantly that sounds a bit more interesting and gives a little bit of emotion. Now what makes it a triad is adding the 3rd note in the middle. Generally if you're going to hear darker or sadder music, it's going to be minor. If it's happy, it's major. Simple as. So what makes the minor or major chord is going to be that middle note. If I want it to be a major chord, as in happy, so just remember our starting note, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th note is going to be the middle one. And then remembering that the last note that we pressed was this one, which was the 7th from the 1st note. And now that's a C major triad. What if I wanted it to be darker? Now, as a producer, if you're doing hip hop and trap and R&B, most of the time you're probably going to end up going minor. So instead, when I do the middle note, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 and hit the black note, which is the D sharp. You can hear instantly that sounds darker. So if I was to draw in that chord now, the C minor, so now I want to make a progression. I want to move on to the next chord. If I copy this over, and let's say I just move it up. So I've moved it up to an E because the first note is the E there. And then the spacing between the next 2 notes haven't changed. It's still 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I can put them anywhere. So now progression is actually coming along and it's starting to invoke a bit of emotion. How do you know how many chords to play in a progression and why is it this long? So when you listen to music, it's going to work in beats and bars. So generally we work in 4 beats in a bar. There's a few different time signatures out there, but we will ignore them for now because we're not doing jazz or anything like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll play the click now and you'll notice that it emphasizes the first beat of each bar. So now to make something pleasing to listen to, you're going to try to stick to using this as a grid. 4 chords is a sort of easy way to make music, just understanding that there are 4 chords in the progression. You can do 3, you can do 2, you can do 1, you can do whatever you want, but this is like an easy place to start off at. So how do I make this a bit more interesting? You remember how we said we have octaves and all the keys are just repeating themselves? Really easily, I could just copy all of these notes or just some of the notes to be lower or higher in the octaves, and that's going to sound bigger, more full, depending on what you want. It could be darker, it can make it lighter. An easy example of this is what people do is they would copy the root note. So the root note is the first note of this chord, C. So I can just copy that down to the C below. It sounds a bit thicker and a bit darker. And then we'll copy that over for the rest of the chords as well. C, and then it goes up to an E. And then it goes down to an A. And then it's an A sharp. And let's not leave it at that, let's copy it down again to make it even more darker and thicker. So it's starting to look a bit more complicated, but you can see there wasn't much to it. I've just played some chords and then I've just copied down the root notes of them. It just makes it sound much better really easily, and that's an easy way to do things. So if you come up with a chord progression, just look at layering different notes. The same thing applies with not just the root note, but let's say the middle note. I could copy that and let's put it higher. So I can see that that's a D sharp. I'm going to copy that an octave higher. So you can hear that top note just adds an extra element and dimension to things. And then we'll do the same with this note. We'll copy that up to be the G. And then let's say for the next chord, we copy up the last notes and not the middle one instead, just to mix things up a bit. So this is a B, you can see it's just next to the middle C, and I'll just copy that up. Pretty cool. And then we'll do the same with the last one, which is going to be an F. And then at some point you could start taking out some notes. I could take out the original middle note from the triad. Okay, so now we understand what the notes are called on the keyboard. We understand the difference between major and minor. We understand how to make a basic chord and how to make a progression. So now when we're making a song, what's the next big element, besides the chords? It's the melody. Initially, what I would recommend is just drawing in notes based upon the chords that you've already laid down. And we're going to use the lessons that we've learned to make a really basic melody in the piano. So now I'm going to work in A minor. So I'm going to use A as my first note and draw in this. And I'm going to make it a minor chord, so I'm going to copy it first of all 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the middle to make it a minor, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll move it down an octave. And I don't know what I want the next chord to be, so I'm going to take out those 2 notes and just copy the root note. And then we've moved it down there to the F. Now we'll copy the note to make the chord in the exact same way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we'll do the minor, so that'll be 1, 2, 3. So now I want to change that. I don't like how that feels. I think it's the right chord, but I think maybe it needs to be major. So all I would do to do that, just remember, is that there'd be an extra space. So that middle note is going to be going up 1. And then we want to do the next chord. We want to go down again. So that's going to go down to a D. So I'm going to copy it again to make the last note of the chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then let's try the minor one first. 1, 2, 3. And then for the last chord, we'll just copy it to be the middle one again. Because that's a really basic progression that you hear in a lot of music, where the last chord will be the same as the second one. So altogether it sounds like this. So that sounds really good, right? It instantly sets an atmosphere, and now we know the direction we want to make a song and melody over. I'm going to copy down the octaves to make them sound a bit bigger and thicker. We could make a whole track of that. I could add drums and a bass, and then a singer could sing or rap on it. Easy peasy. But no, we want to make it a bit more interesting. We want to give a melody on top of it. We're going to remember what we said. It's in A minor. We're going to start off in A minor. So we've just gone up a couple of octaves and we're going to draw in the A. And this is going to start off the melody, or the top line essentially. See how easy that was? It's just, once again, it sounds right, it fits in with the chords. If you're working in A minor, you're quite lucky because all the notes in it are white. You never have to use any of the black notes, so it's one of my favorite scales for that reason, but we'll get into that more next week. So I'm just going to continue drawing in notes for the whole chord progression until it sounds pretty decent. And that's how you make a basic piano melody using really basic music theory. Hopefully now you've understood really basics, you've learned what the keys are called, what makes a chord, the difference between minor and major, and how easy it is to make a chord progression and a melody based off just that information. No scales, nothing more complicated than that. In next week's video, we're going to get a little bit more complex. We're going to start understanding scales, what they are and why we use them. And then we'll also get into a bit more about chords and how to make chords more interesting. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video next week. And please let me know in the comments below if this has helped you or if there's anything specific you want to understand about music theory, and I'll definitely answer those questions. But for now, I'm going to turn this melody into a full beat and play it in a second and show you how easy it is to turn really basic music theory knowledge into a basic melody that can then be turned into a full actual track. Thank you so much for watching, appreciate it. Have a good one. Peace out.